and share my screen. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see that.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, so as I mentioned, this webinar today will be on what's required to take the social business model canvas, which we have talked about in the last 2 webinars in detail, to a full business plan, and what the purpose of that business plan is and how you can use it both internally and externally. So first, we'll just go through why you might need a business plan, what it's useful for, who is it for, what types of formats business plans come in, and then all of the parts that need to be in it. So you'll see the graphic in the bottom right-hand corner that a business plan includes your mission statement, an executive summary, your company background, what your product or service is, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats analysis, a marketing plan, and financial planning. So it really goes through the entire scope of the business. And this is where you iron out a lot of the details about how you're actually going to deliver on your value proposition. So we're moving sort of from a high level overview and getting more into the nuts and bolts of how to deliver your product or service. So what is the purpose of the business plan? It's both an external document and an internal document. So it's a planning document for you and your team where you can communicate your vision and your plan to your team and plan out various aspects of your business. And as well, it's a communication tool for external use that you are going to present to different funders, financiers, loans people, and then they'll base their decision whether to invest or loan you money on the contents of that plan. And it also will help you guide your future decision making. So although there is sort of a traditional template for a business plan, it's really important to make that business plan useful to you and tailor the pieces that are in there to serve your team's needs well. So this is really important when we're thinking about moving from the business idea right through to the business model. So the creation of an enterprise, I'll say it from my personal experience as a business owner, is a lot of intensive learning at all stages. So you'll enter a business and you'll have a certain skill set based on your academic training and your previous work experience. But when you're looking at all aspects of the business, there's always going to be areas where your knowledge is lacking or your skills aren't as strong as other areas. So you're always going to be learning new things. You start with your business idea, and that describes the solution, your product or service for a problem. But that doesn't guarantee that you're going to have success, even if the business idea itself is great. You're going to have to take that idea and turn it into a working, comprehensive model. So this is the part where we concretize the idea into a model, and that requires a lot of commitment and a lot of hard work. So I just say that up front because I don't want people to be shied away in those early stages where things can feel really overwhelming as we're moving from the idea and the canvas to a full business plan. So if you find that it's a lot of hard work, it's not, you know, something that you're experiencing on your own. It's not unique. It's very common in those early stages to find that this could be overwhelming. So hopefully this webinar and other tools that we can provide will make it seem a little less intimidating. Why is this not? Oops. There we go. So the 4 questions to ask yourself when we're taking our idea, our canvas, and from the model to the full plan is to review again what the benefit of the product and service is to the customer. So we've talked a great deal about how what you're offering to the customer isn't just the product or service itself. What you're really offering is a solution to a problem that they're experiencing. And your unique value proposition is how you're able to offer that solution in a way that they aren't able to currently find in the marketplace, or the solutions that they've currently tried aren't optimal for the problem they're experiencing. And then through that value proposition, we distill out who our target market is. And this is particularly important in a social enterprise because your marketing budget probably isn't as large as a private corporation. So to get the most out of your marketing efforts, you want to make sure that you're really targeting the customers who are going to be seeking your specific solution. And then how are you going to offer that new product or service? Is it how are you going to make this good, deliver on this service? And then how are you going to make sure that the revenue model that you're operating under is going to be generating profits? So you want to make sure that you're going to be able to meet that break-even point at a time that you've outlined in your business plan that's going to allow you to cover your fixed costs, and then eventually be making a profit that you can then put back into your organization. So a really good way to visualize all of this is to use this magic triangle. So we're relating the questions of what do you offer to the customer? How do you create that value proposition? How is the revenue created? And who are the customers? And this graphic really ties in the revenue model and the value chain and the value proposition. So this is when you're writing your business plan, regardless of which section you're in, and when you're getting into the details and the nuts and bolts, you want to keep at the top of mind that you're always addressing these questions when you're delivering the answers to what's required in your business plan. So as I mentioned, the business plan is both an internal and an external tool. So internal is a business plan is something that you will use for your planning. So it is a living document. So once you've written it, you don't just sort of put it on the shelf and leave it there. It's going to be constantly being updated because the marketplace is constantly changing. New technologies are being developed. You'll have the opportunity to enter new markets. You might be able to take some of your sales, if you have a brick and mortar store, to taking those sales online. You may be developing new social media marketing tools. So it's always a living document. And so for internal purposes, you use it for planning. So it'll outline what your needs are, how you're going to assess the impact of your social enterprise, and how feasible the business itself is. And when you do this and look at whether or not you're going to actually be able to deliver on this value proposition, it will help you early on to build confidence that your idea is solid, that you have the knowledge and the resources that you require to build on that value proposition, and you have a clear plan going forward. Which leads us into the second point then. It'll help you to plan out your sales revenue stream. So if you know, for example, that you're in a seasonal business, you can do some sales forecasting throughout the year. And there may be times where you are anticipating peak highs of sales, and then other times where you're going to have lower sales, and you'll have to plan your budget accordingly so that you can get through those months where the sales aren't as high. And make sure that you're measuring all of these things and getting your finances in order. And that'll help gain traction in your organization. So when the business plan is laid out for the team and they can see a very clear path forward, that'll help them to become more engaged and wanting to be part of the social enterprise. And then as well, once you've got your operations underway, you can look back at the business plan and see how close your projections were to what's actually transpired in reality. And then you can use what you've discovered by actually conducting business to pivot and refine what's in the plan. So you can gauge whether or not you are ahead of your sales goals, behind your sales goals, ahead in your development of your product or your technology, or behind, and then what you need to change in order to get where you want to be. So that's all useful for your internal purposes. But the business plan is also something you'll present externally to key stakeholders, investors, and funders. And in there, it'll have all the same content, but with a different motivation. So the outlining the need and the impact and the feasibility is to be looking to gain the interest of those key stakeholders and investors by showing them that you have clear plans and activities and desired outcomes, that you'll be able to build a relationship with them where they trust that you're going to be able to deliver, and you're going to be able to get their buy-in and their support. So there's two aspects of the business plan, although it's the same document. One is going to be the planning tools for your internal team, and then the communication tools that you're going to use for your external stakeholders. So it's really important then, when you're thinking about your business plan, to think about who your audience is and who are you communicating with, what are you asking for them, and what are they going to need to know. So you can sort of like a resume, when you probably have a standard resume, and then you would fine tune it depending on the type of job that you're applying for, where you might be taking out some skills that aren't relevant and focusing on skills that are relevant and really tailoring it to that. So you can make tweaks to the business plan depending on who your audience is. So for example, if you were going to the bank and you were looking for a loan, they're going to want to see any historical financials if you have them, and if you don't have them, what your projections are and what those are based on. And then if you have any letters sort of recommendation of people who have done other work with you, you could include those. And then what are you hoping for after you would present that? And so that would be like securing the loan, securing the funding, and how do you want the reader to perceive your business? So you want it to be well thought out, a clear value proposition. You're able to tell a clear story, and you're able to really demonstrate that you're going to be able to get the revenue that you're intending to. So those would be like doing the numbers in terms of looking at your fixed and variable costs and making sure that your price point for your product or service is such that you're able to cover those fixed and variable costs. So a business plan usually begins with telling a story. So for social enterprise, you're going to include what your impact is. So social enterprise, in addition to having a for-profit goal in the business, it's also looking to have some type of social impact. So you want to make sure that that's clearly illustrated right up front. You're going to talk about what your current situation is for your nonprofit organization. So how are you currently serving needs in the community? Then you want to move on to looking at your target market and your customers and what the growth would potentially be there. And then how are you going to get there with your sales and your revenue? And then both from the perspective of your financial goal as well as your impact goal, what's your end result or your vision? So how is this social enterprise both going to generate profit and generate the social impact that you desire? So there's different types of business plans. There's anywhere from, the full length business plan that's required by banks or large lenders or large funding requests. And these can vary between 20 to 80 pages long. You can get templates off the Business Development Bank of Canada website. And then these are pretty standardized full-length business plans. And then from there, you can take contents from there and develop shorter business plans. And those could be used for smaller funding requests or internally for talking about different strategies within the team. And then you could have your kind of high-level overview business plan, and that would be something that you might have if you were out at a networking event or a conference and you were meeting people and you wanted to just hand them something quickly. And then you can also have your business plan on a PowerPoint format, and that's usually, we'll talk about that more in the next webinar. and that's used as part of your pitch presentation. So that's a very tailored part of the business plan where you have a clear ask, and you're going into a presentation where you're you're delivering to a very specific audience, and you have a very clear ask. And we'll talk about that more in the webinar on pitch presentations. So my experience with developing a business plan is I usually have the full length one developed first, and then from there, it's really easy then to pull out bits and pieces to create the short form business plan and the overview and the PowerPoint presentation. So you have your large business plan where you've put in, quite a bit of work with the team, looking, and there's lots of references in there and lots of data. And then once you have that, then it's very easy to put together these shorter types of business plans. So there's a lot of sections to a business plan, and this is just your overall list of them. So you have your executive summary, the summary of the enterprise, what the social or environmental challenges, the overview of the market, looking at your industry and your competition and collaborators, a clear description of your product or service with your unique value proposition, your sales strategy, different partnerships and community support, your financial analysis, how you're going to implement a risk analysis, and then an exit strategy and a conclusion. So I would say the exit strategy is something that social entrepreneurs, particularly in this space, and nonprofit organizations probably aren't going to consider. This tends to be included more when you're going for venture capital funding, and you're going to be looking to sell the business down the road, and people are going to be looking for a return on their investment in the business. So that's part of more of a general business plan, but I wouldn't expect there to be necessarily an exit strategy in a social enterprise. So we'll just go briefly through these sections. So the executive summary is basically a summarization of the entire business plan. And I always tend to write this last, even though it comes first in the order of the business plan, just because it's easier to write it after you've gone through the whole business plan and fleshed out all of the details. So the point of this is really to, it's sort of like the first chapter in the book. You want to get your reader introduced to the enterprise, get them excited about the work that you're doing, provide enough background that you are demonstrate your credibility. And you're really writing a story where you're taking pieces of each of the sections and then weaving it together into a 1 to 2 pages, so that when someone finishes the executive summary, they have a clear understanding of all of the things that are included in the business plan. And then when they start to go through the business plan, they're going to be looking and digging into the details that are important to them for whatever information they need about what you're asking for. So it's important to include your financial highlights always, because most of the time business plans are used for money-seeking endeavors. So you go through all of the things that you have in the business plan and then summarize them in this executive summary. So here's just a quick checklist about how to prepare an effective executive summary. And the reason it's again so important is it's the first pages in the business plan. So if someone doesn't make it through your executive summary, then they likely aren't going to read the rest of your business plan. So it's important that it's short and to the point. It's clearly explained. You're engaging your readers, enticing them to keep reading. It's clear what your goals are, and thinking about what would an investor think when they're reading your executive summary, and recognizing why they would want to invest in your business. So I always encourage people to, after they've written their business plan and executive summary, to put it away for a few days or weeks and then come back to it and read it from the point of view of an investor or a reader, and see if you would be interested in investing in this enterprise. So in addition to an executive summary, because we're in the social enterprise space, you also want to include your vision and your mission. and then how that ties into your product or a service, and your revenue model. And you can include some history of the enterprise. So nonprofits will have already had a lot of partnerships and stakeholder engagement, and all of that will help to boost the credibility of the enterprise that you're looking to develop. So this is an additional summary on top of your executive summary that's more specific to this space, because your organization has been operating for a while and now it's looking to add this additional piece to it. So you already have a lot of key things that investors and loans people will be interested in terms of your credibility, which is demonstrated by your board and your other partnerships, and how long you've been in existence for, and how your value to the community. And then from there, you're going to elaborate on that value to the community, where you clearly explain what are the social and environmental challenges being addressed. How big is this challenge? You can talk about what the research on the scope of this challenge is. And then there's a few models that we can use to determine how big the challenge is, and then how the impact of our solution to that challenge. And these are the theory of change and logic models. And we'll talk more about that in our last webinar on impact evaluation, which this is a very specific way of doing impact measurement. And you want to demonstrate how your value proposition, your solution, fills a gap. Okay, so you're looking at, there's already possibly solutions in the marketplace, but you want to demonstrate why your solution is unique, why it's better, why you can be effective at solving this challenge. And if you have any stories or client testimonials, those are all very helpful to back up what you're proposing to do. And then, like we discussed in our social business canvas, we're going to be looking at the market, and you want to be able to explain which customers you're specifically targeting and what's your strategy to sell your product or service to those customers. And as I mentioned, it's particularly important in the nonprofit space, because your marketing budget might not be as large as a for-profit corporation in the beginning, and you want to make sure that you're getting as much value for the dollars you're spending in marketing as possible. So that involves developing a key target market through demographics and behaviors. And we talked about value graphics. So what are people's values when they're looking at purchasing a product or a service? If you're able to collect any research or data on your potential customer base or an existing customer base through surveys or focus groups. And then you really want to build up your branding and your brand awareness. So with social media now, that is an excellent tool that people can use to develop brand awareness that wasn't as available, a decade or so ago. And then once you've established those sales leads and relationships, you want to make sure that you're maintaining them. And so I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but maintaining an existing customer is far cheaper than trying to seek out a new customer. So once you have a good customer base, you want to make sure that you're maintaining those relationships. So you could have email lists, newsletters, Facebook groups, LinkedIn page, however, what's best suited to your business. And some tips for building your target market is to sort of create a few fake personas, and then, develop out what those customers would look like, what their age group is, where they tend to shop, what their hobbies are, and that'll all give you some indication into how they spend their time and spend their money, and whether or not they're going to be good for your target market. And you also want to make sure you're always clearly describing the problem that you're solving. So, and just really stick to that. It's not just that you're selling a product or a service, but you're solving a problem for somebody else. And also, when looking at the market, we tend to be focused on our customers, but we have to also remember to consider our suppliers. So you have to think about whether or not your inputs are coming from one or two primary suppliers, and what would happen if that supply chain was jeopardized for some reason. And so you'd want to have sort of a backup plan if that was the case, or if it's not possible. When you identify your suppliers, talk to them early on and make sure you develop a good relationship with them, and so that they understand what your needs are, so that you're not put in a position where you're unable to satisfy the needs of your customers because you're don't have a good relationship with your suppliers and you can't get your inputs. And then you just review your advertising and promotion strategy. So how are you reaching and selling to customers? And then also we talked about the roadmap, the journey, the customer journey. And so advertising and promotion doesn't just end after somebody's purchased the product. You also have to think about follow-up support, follow-up sales support, and how does that play into your advertising and promotion strategy. So as part of this as well, you're going to be considering your pricing and distribution, how you price your services or products. So you want to make sure that you've looked at similar services and products so that you're competitive in the market. So you don't want to be priced too high. There's also consideration that you don't want to be priced too low, because people sometimes tend to see things that price too low as lower quality. So you want to make sure that you develop a pricing strategy that can cover your costs, but it's also in line with what's being delivered in the market. And if you have a major competitor that can absorb a lot of costs, you want to be aware of them, because you don't want to get in a position where you would be vulnerable in a price war. So somebody who has a lot larger business could easily undercut your pricing, and then put you in a position where you're not able to sell anymore. You have to drop your price to a point where you're not able to cover your costs. So you want to be sure, know the players out there, and if something like that were to happen, how you would handle it, because that would be a risk. So you would want to know how you could deliver on your value proposition in a way that customers would still see the value in your product over your competitors. And then if you're having to deliver on any warranties or product guarantees, you want to make sure that those are in place. And then also, what would be the cost on delivering them? So you don't want to put in a 100% money back guarantee if it doesn't work, and then not be able to actually deliver on that warranty or guarantee. So make sure that when you're thinking about those things, they're actually in line with your revenue stream. And then you could do a estimate on how many refunds you would expect in a year, or how many guarantees you would expect to have to honor, and then calculate out a budget for that. And then you look at getting into the nuts and bolts of your operational plan. So this is actually just how and where you're going to get the work done. When you've talked about all the things you want to accomplish, and then this is the timeline for how you're actually going to carry it out. And the focus here should be on the things that might be the hardest to implement. So I find generally as human beings, we like to work on easy things because they make us feel good and they make us feel happy and competent. And so there's always a little bit of a resistance to work on things that are challenging and difficult to implement. So I always like to do the things that make me happiest first, and then put myself in a good and confident mood, and then move on to the challenge of the most difficult to implement. But definitely never ignore this piece, because that's going to be the crux of where you're going to find things hard, and you might not be successful if it's not addressed. So you can look at your business location. You write a short description of all the locations, what the hours of operation are. Do you rent or own this property? Do you have a mortgage? Is this location involved in your sales? So would it be a storefront, or is it sort of a more behind the scenes factory where you may not need to have, a fancy front facing thing for customers? So you can consider all those things as part of your business location. And then you'd want to look at your equipment. What types of equipment do you have? Do you need to buy new equipment? And then you also have to think about the amortization of that equipment. How often will it need to be replaced or upgraded? What happens if the equipment goes down? How, is it you're able to fix it on site? Do you need to get a technician in? And then your technology requirements. So do you need to purchase new technology? What's the anticipated cost of that? And then you also want to think about data storage and security, and if you have to protect any anonymous results. So that's often a piece that gets overlooked, but it's probably becoming more and more critical with the number of cyber attacks and hacking events. So you want to make sure that part of your technology requirements includes a budget if you need it for data storage and security. And then you go through and look at your industry and your competition and your collaborators, and you want to see how you're fitting into a gap in this industry and why it is the right time to launch. So there's also always definitely a timing aspect. So you want to make sure that when you do your launch, that it's at as good as you can get it. I mean, that you have limited control. There's things that are not going to be in your control. But you can always look at when might be a better time. So, like the holiday season, or depending on if you are in a seasonal business and maybe it's the holiday, like summer season, then that would be a good time to launch. So you just want to look at those aspects, and then also consider all of the economic and competitive trends and how they relate to your business and what kind of advantage that you get. And it's better to display anything if you can in graphics or in photos, and you don't make a long list. It would be preferable that you have like a pie chart or a graph that tell this story. So as an example, as far as industry trends go, right now, Canada is sort of in a position where we're anticipating some potentially big changes in our trade with the Trump administration coming in January, and the talk about a lot of tariffs. And so depending on how that might affect your business and a product or service that you might offer, you might decide to wait to launch until after that event has happened and we have a clearer picture about what those tariffs are going to look like, right? So now might not be the right time, because then in a few weeks you could be in a position where it's going to be much harder to deliver that product or service at the price point that you anticipated, because there's going to be this environment that's now not in your control, that's going to impact that. So that would be an example of a timing decision. So you might want to wait for things like that you know are definitely going to come and could possibly have some disruption. And then you want to include all the partnerships and community support. So this is really critical for the nonprofit space. So they've already, it's really great because you've already had built a lot of credibility in the community. You already have partners and that you've been working with and good relationships. You'll be able to get support letters and MOUs and different testimonials. So you've really already built a lot of credibility in your organization, even though you haven't launched a social enterprise. You've already demonstrated a lot of the things required to do this next step. So this is an important piece of your business plan. And then finally, you want to look at what the risks are in operating a social enterprise. And so the biggest point of a risk analysis is really to reduce the fear of risk. So there's always going to be a risk to anything that you undertake. But if you understand what the risks are and set up a good contingency plan, it can really reduce the fear around that risk because you've been very upfront with your investors about what that risk looks like and how you're going to tackle it if and when it arrives. So you could identify any internal or external events that could trigger a change in your timetable. So ideally at the beginning, you can identify 3 key risks. And then from these 3 key risks, how you would handle them if they were to come into place. Do you have the right people in place? If there were delays, how would you handle that? If your cash flow was affected, how would you handle that? And then always looking at your plan B. So, and then also considering not waiting for these sort of risks to come to their full fruition, but what are the signals that these types of risks are on the horizon? So, how are you going to monitor things to mitigate downflow impact of risk? So, if you are able to see that there is a risk and we're going to do something about it early, then that could prevent the risk from sort of snowballing and becoming something that has a larger impact down the road. So this is really critical, especially when you're asking people for money, because they want to know if they're going to be putting their money into you. What's the chance of this being successful? And one of the ways you demonstrate that is by negating their fears around the things that would lead to it not being successful. So that is an important piece of the business plan. And I believe that is the end of the formal presentation. So we can move to questions if I can escape.
Wonderful. And so thank you, Amir. That was very insightful. So many great nuggets of information in there. So there were no questions in the chat, but does anyone have any questions? I'll give people a few minutes. Or you can pop your question in the chat as well if you don't want to speak up. Amir, I believe you're still sharing your screen, so I think you could
Okay.
stop that. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Perfect. Any questions? Okay. Well,
Okay.
hearing that nonce. And also, if you know you have a question afterward, not right now, but you have Amia's email address on the website, on our website, and you can email her directly or call her with any of your question. More than happy to help you with that. That will be it for today's session. This session was recorded, as we mentioned before at the beginning, and it will be available on our YouTube channel afterward. If you want to go watch that again, or if you want to get some more, maybe you missed something or you wanted some more insight, you can go watch that again. And yeah, that'll be it. Amir, do you have any last words for today?
No, so just to mention that we do have the last two sessions coming up, so that information will be on our website, and all of the social enterprise webinars have been recorded, so they're all on the YouTube channel. And of course, if you have any questions, you can email me anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.